All right. Hey, Kevin, thanks for hanging out with me again.
My pleasure. I always enjoy it.
This is fun. See, I actually enjoy having people back on my podcast and kind of developing the ongoing relationship with the people I like versus just bringing random new people in all the time.
I've been doing a lot more of that, is bringing on repeats, whether it's second or third time. I try to remember if I've had them on my show too.
That was a poke at me. Dude, listen, I cannot tell you how that goes down on my top 10. Like, that's just embarrassing to me. Like, I was so embarrassed when it was just like, hey, this is the first time we've talked. And you're like, dude, you were on my show. God,
Good
I,
times.
yeah, I don't even know what to say about it other than it's just still to this day
Well,
embarrassing.
I'm just glad you got the joke and remembered that you were on my show ever.
No, hey, I appreciate you bringing it up. Nothing like getting a good poke in. Like, listen, the best jokes are the ones that sting a little bit, and that one stings a little bit.
Perfect.
I was going to tell you, though, I was going to congratulate you
Mhm.
on becoming a new dad.
Oh, thank you. Yeah,
That's a
it's
big deal.
exciting. Yeah, he's 8 weeks old on Monday, a couple of days from now, and he's focusing the eyes a little bit. He's smiling. He's growing. So it's just I know you have children. It's something that you can't really understand until you do have one, right?
This first time, right?
Yeah, first child.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm going to warn you that uh, you're going to have this like hold them in one hand time,
Yeah.
and then you're going to blink your eyes. And my oldest is starting high school next year.
Wow.
So, and I don't know how that happened. I look exactly the same. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm still young and spry,
Uh,
and she's 6 foot tall and getting ready to start high school. And I don't know how it just blows me away. Like, it
yeah.
really blows me away.
I'm excited. It's just a really fun part of my life. Obviously, it was a weird time to be born. He was born April 13th, so right in the middle of everything. Uh, but I got this. I was off for 6 weeks from practice. I took an early paternity, stayed on paternity a little longer. We closed the practice for a month down here in South Florida because we were kind of a hotbed in April. So I got to spend quite a bit of time with him. So it's been nice.
Yeah, I knew that that was coming up for you, and I didn't reach out to you, but my thought was like, I hope they let you in. Like, I mean, I know that some people weren't even being allowed in the hospital for at least people that were sick and stuff.
Yeah, they let me in, no guests, no family. So, but it made it good. Like it was a C-section because he was breech. So we had like 2.5 days at the hospital, just the three of us, which was nice. It was good.
Your wife doing okay?
Yeah, she's doing great.
Oh
Absolutely.
gosh, dude, it's so what became apparent to me when my child was born, I immediately became aware of the fact that my parents had no idea what they were doing.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I thought my parents knew what they were doing, and
Yeah.
literally as soon as my child was handed to me, this thought of like, my parents had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah, and not to bore anybody, but I'm 40, so I had my first child at 40, which is obviously a
Yeah.
little later in life. My mom was 20 when she had me. My parents were young; they're still together actually, and I think to myself, I was like, at her age, sorry, at my age, I was in college, right? When she was my age, I was in college. I'm just having my first one, so I was like, imagine what to do this at 20 years old. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy, and I've heard arguments to kind of both sides of it, and mine mine were I mean, we're the same age, so I mean, my daughter's getting ready to start high school, and then I have a 11-year-old and a soon to be 9-year-old, so they're kind of ahead of that, but you know it's crazy. It's just crazy how fast it goes.
so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's nice.
So you kind of mentioned like being off work, and we're
Yeah.
kind of coming out all this like coronavirus stuff and things
Mhm.
like that. And the world is just falling apart.
Yeah.
Um, but as business sort of gets back to normal from like
Mhm.
the virus stuff, some chiropractors were shut down completely. Some
Yeah.
of them were shut down partially. All of us are kind of functioning at lesser capacity from,
Mhm.
as far as I know. Uh, I think reactivation is becoming like that should be on the forefront,
Yeah.
and or reminders. I don't even know if we call it reactivation, but it's just basically that idea. And do you have any sort of thoughts about that in terms of like online or offline, or recommendations that you're making to people saying, hey, start thinking about this, because if you're just going to sit around and wait for people to show up, that's
Yeah.
probably not the best strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a lot of thoughts on it because we did close both our offices for a month, and then I worked with a lot of chiropractors that did close their office, and so we built some strategies around it. But one of the things I want to preface it by is that during crises, you hope that you can learn something from it to carry you on for the rest of your career. I remember back, I had just opened up a practice in late 2007, and it was a cash practice, and the economy fell apart, right? And I learned to hustle. Like, I knew I had to get out there and do everything possible to actually have a business. And I did that. And so then fast forward to 2010, when I opened up my own practice without a partner in a different city, I still carried that hustle with me. And I really grew my practice right out of the gates because of that. And so that was a learning experience for me. And I think to carry it to now, 2020, I think a lot of chiropractors are realizing that they failed to build an audience prior to this. And so you saw a lot of chiropractors starting to post on social media, put videos on there, run
Yeah.
Facebook ads, Instagram, putting videos on YouTube. I asked them, are you emailing your patients? Like, well, I never had an email list. Like, and so they were creating content in a hurry to try to like do something because now they had to, right? And
Yeah.
it was a really bad situation, but it was unfortunately for a lot of people falling on deaf ears because they never did this before, right? So
Nobody cares what you have to say when they don't know you.
exactly. And then they're like, why are we hearing from you now type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. And I don't think that's totally the case. People are, if you're giving good value, then they're not going to be offended or anything like that. But you had to be careful too, right? Like you had to be on message. You didn't want to be off message. Right? Like I had shot, and I'm going to get to the point here in a second, but I had spent a whole Saturday morning shooting golf injury prevention videos with this other trainer who does a lot with golfers, and we spent money on a videographer and we edited it, we did all that, and then the coronavirus stuff happened. I was like, we're not running this golf campaign in our community right now. The golf courses are shut down, right? So we had to
Yeah.
pivot. But what you need to do is make sure you're building an audience consistently. Now, best case scenario, or I should say worst case scenario, is you probably at least have your own patient base, right? So as a chiropractor, if you have any history of a practice, you do have an audience. Now, you may not have an audience on Facebook and you may not have one on Instagram and YouTube or whatever, but you do have an audience. And I think when you're going to relaunch your practice, or even if you're in the early throes of it now, like we're a month into reopen, we opened up May 4th again. Um, we're still in this process of getting reactivation. So I want you to really focus on your patient base that you have and figure out how you can actually get information to them. And that's what we did. And we can definitely dive into some of the specifics of that.
Yeah. I think that one of the core elements that I talk about a lot with my docs that I work with is community. And it's the idea of connecting to people that you're building trust with, like they're not patients yet, connecting with people that you are currently serving, and connecting with people that you have served in the past.
Mhm.
And obviously how you communicate with them and the value you provide to them is going to be slightly different, but they're all kind of thrown into most of the time. I mean, they're kind of, you can do it online or offline, but
Mhm.
some of the easiest ways to do it is online. And but it has to do with, and we're going to talk about this later, but it
Mhm.
just has to do a lot of it with content. It's like
Yeah.
it can't just be, I don't even know. There
Mhm.
has to be something to it. There has to be some meat to it. Otherwise it isn't a community at all. It's just a advertising page or something.
Yeah, and that's a big difference between, let's say, Facebook ads, like paid ads, like typical advertisements, and then you've got, uh, you know, paid content distribution, right? Facebook's great at that. So if you shoot a great video with content, you put it on Facebook, you're probably going to still have to pay some money to get the distribution levels you want, but that's not an ad, right? That's actual value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that was a big thing people need to do. And then we narrowed down different topics, right? So you had a lot of people working from home. So we started doing at-home ergonomics topics. We had a lot of people that couldn't really go to their chiropractor. So we talked a lot about how to fix or prevent your own low back pain or your neck pain or
Yeah.
your headaches. We did mattress stuff. A lot of people got into running. I saw so many people running in my neighborhood that never were running before. So we so we did some like pre-run warm-up things and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So we tried to like narrow our content topics to people that would find value in it, because it's not going to be golf anymore. It's not going to be some of the other things that we would talk about that would really be off message.
Yeah, I think that's a really there's a fundamental principle that's there too, which is just understanding who you're talking to,
Yep.
because you can't. The idea of building a community and just kind of generically throwing stuff out, which is also my issue with I speak out a lot against canned canned everything. And that doesn't mean you can't, if you know your audience and someone produces content that
Mhm.
that is aligns with your audience, that you can't have somebody else help you with content. What it means is you can't start with the content and then try to force feed it to your audience. And a lot of chiropractors do that because they don't want to write something, they don't want to create something, they don't know how, they're not sure what to do with it, and they just like, well, this person makes some nice brochures or this person does nice email campaigns, let's just send that to my people. But if it disconnects with your people, it's really pointless.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the two things that, if anybody's heard me talk on about marketing or anything like that, I would say two things that I try to hit home is definitely content marketing, and not just advertisements, but really generating and creating good content that serves your audience, right? And then the second thing is, and this goes to your point of the reactivations, is historically in chiropractic, it's all been about new patients, right? So new
Yeah.
patient marketing, new patient marketing, new patient marketing. And that's the other thing that chiropractors ran into the buzzsaw with this coronavirus, was that you really no longer could get new patients for this period of time, right? And even though you may be opening up, there's fewer new patients that are coming in right now for the most part. I'm
Yeah.
talking to a lot of different chiropractors. I've seen it in my practice. So I've talked a lot about marketing to all three phases of that patient life cycle, right? So you've got new
Yeah.
patient marketing, you've got the patient experience, which is everything from the time they've scheduled online or visited your website or called your office to the end of their treatment plan. And then you got inactive patient marketing. And so I hit inactive patient marketing just as much as I hit new patient marketing. That's just something I've really done over the last 3 or 4 years. I know new patients are important. I'm not saying it's not, but hitting that inactive patient base that haven't been in your office for some period of time, so much easier to get them to come back in than to get a new person to call your office.
I think that a misconception, and I see this a lot with the docs that I work with, is that when I talk to them about retention,
Mhm.
if they happen to be more, they deal with injuries, they deal with short-term care plans, like things of that nature, and they really have an aversion to long-term care or anything like that, that becomes the crutch and an
Mhm.
excuse for not having good retention. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Let me just, okay. So someone comes in, you see them 7 or 8 times, they're better, you release them. And my question is always, when do they come back?
Yes.
Like, are you telling me that this person never hurts themselves ever again? Because like I've had a bum shoulder for like 8 years now. Like I've
Mhm.
had a bad, my back. I love chiropractic, and chiropractic
Mhm.
has helped me tremendously, but my back still bothers me and has since I was a teenager. So I may go months on end and be fine,
Mhm.
but like a life of no more problems ever does not exist for me. Like there's something that's always hurting.
Yep.
And so the idea of like, why are these people leaving
Mhm.
and never coming back into your door the next time they need a chiropractor for a visit or two or 6 or 8 or 10?
Yep.
Like that's a problem. And if you're just telling yourself, well, I don't do wellness care, I don't do long-term care plans, that's why I don't have any sort of really good retention,
Mhm.
you're using that as an excuse for bad systems.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's such a good point you bring up. And a lot of chiropractors, especially the ones that I talk a lot with, the evidence informed sports chiropractors, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
they almost have this pride in getting them better in one visit or three visits or
Yeah.
whatever. And so if it gets into that six or seven, they feel like they're a bad chiropractor. It is like, this person's had back pain for 8 years, right? Like you're not going to get So yeah, they beat themselves up on that. And
Yeah.
yeah, you can improve your patient retention by better communication, better expectation setting, reportify, like all that stuff is great. But they're missing the boat because not only are they having poor, let's call it patient retention, they're also having poor reactivations for those new injuries and new pains like you're mentioning. And that's the kiss of death for a practice.
I tell chiropractors all the time that if you see, like, practice management, in like the kind of sleazy sense,
Mhm.
tries to convince chiropractors that everybody wants to be and will be and should be like a wellness patient, like
Mhm.
once a week for the rest of your life. That's stupid. It's ridiculous. If we could download like perfect understanding of chiropractic, that still would never happen. Like if every single person completely 1000% understood the value of chiropractic, that would still not happen. And so it's unrealistic. But what is realistic is lifetime patients.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly stressing that what you want to have happen when a person comes to you for the first time
Mhm.
is you want compliance for the plan, like whatever you're helping them with. I don't care if it's 2 visits, 5 visits, 25 visits, 30 visits, like helping them with what they need, them doing it and complying. You want that. And then you also want a relationship. You want to become their chiropractor. So when they need a chiropractor in the future, they go to you. They're not like shopping for coupons. They're not like, oh, this person opened up and they're like 6 feet closer. Like it's nothing like that. Like they know it's a no brainer. Oh, hurt my back again. I'm going to go see, I'm going to go see Dr. Kevin. Like that's what should happen.
Yeah, and that's to your point where, yeah, if they're a wellness patient, yeah, and it's easier to build that relationship, right? Because they're coming into your office and you can establish and cement that relationship and nurture it continuously. But again, not all patients are going to be like that. And then especially if you fall into that category where you don't really do much of that, how are you nurturing and cementing that relationship with them without them coming into your office? And that's how content marketing delivered through certain strategies to people that have been in your office before is how you do it.
And I think that that's a good place to start with the
Mhm.
conversation of reactivation,
Yeah.
because if you haven't done a good job connecting with them, helping them, serving them, building that relationship, whatever those things are that happen in the beginning of a relationship,
Mhm.
it's much harder. Like, because what chiropractors oftentimes are looking for is this magical script, this incredible graphic, this thing that's going to be like, oh, if I just send this out to people that I didn't treat well, didn't connect with, didn't listen to, they didn't feel heard, they didn't feel helped. If I send it out to them, they're going to come back. It's like, no, they're not. There's no copy in the world that's going
Yeah.
to be so amazing that you can overcome no relationship or a bad relationship.
Mhm.
So that's such an important point. When I'm jumping ahead to like, hey, how do we reactivate?
Yeah.
You're going, hey, late. How do you start that relationship? So when you send a person a letter, they open and read it. When you send them a postcard, they read it. When you call, they actually listen to the message you left them or whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, you don't have to do these campaigns, right? Or these, like you said, direct response campaigns to get them to convince them to come back in by giving them a free something,
Mhm.
per se, right? And you do that, that's fine, whatever, within your legal ethical rights of what you can give away. But ultimately, you're building and nurturing a relationship so that when you deliver content to them, if you got 3,000 people on your email list and you send an email each week, there's going to be a handful of people that come in because they got that email and it resonated with them and it reminded them that, oh yeah, I've got this headache happening, and
Yeah.
they come into your office and call. So that, to me, like the number one thing for reactivations and really marketing to that inactive patient crowd is email.
Now, do you have um I don't do you have a thought about systematizing that
Mhm.
in a sense of, because my thought is always like, if you don't have a system,
Mhm.
you either go long periods of time and just don't do it because
Yeah.
you get busy too, and like you forget
Mhm.
about it,
Mhm.
or you just do it so much that people start feeling like they're harassed. Is
Mhm.
there like a thought process that you have about um how much you should reach out to
Yeah.
people, like particular mediums that are better than others? Like what's kind of
Mhm.
your thought process with that?
Yeah, again, I think it depends on what you're giving them. So, I got so many emails once places closed down from people I've never had got an email from.
Yeah,
Like,
me too.
I tell this story because it's funny because Tiger Woods has a restaurant, up in Jupiter, Florida, which is like 45 minutes away from me. And I went there, I played golf up in that area. I went there with a buddy to play golf. Somehow they got my email address. And this was in 2016, right? I never got an email from them.
Yeah.
I got an email every day about their special for takeout food during the coronavirus, right? And it's like
what cleaner they're using.
Yeah.
Like how many times they're like steam cleaning the chairs that you're not sitting in.
Yes. Yes. So I was just like, I laughed it off. Like it took me a week to get off there because I just didn't do anything. And after a while I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
So I unsubscribed, but that's a problem. And I think a lot of chiropractors, not a lot, but maybe ran into that same thing too. So my email list is used to hearing from me once a week, but they're also used to hearing from me with content, with educational things, health things. Very rarely, maybe one out of every 10 emails is something that's got a little bit of promo behind it, right?
Yeah.
Or it's, like for instance, maybe it's a holiday email I'll send out. Like there's some of those, but for the most part, it's providing them with education so that when the coronavirus thing happened and they got my email, they weren't surprised by that. I was still in touch.
Yeah.
I was still cultivating that relationship. And now we did throw in an email explaining our new hours or the fact that we were closing. Like we made sure we emailed them before we opened up again. We actually did a survey of what would make them feel comfortable about coming back in. And these are the steps we're taking to make it a safe environment. Is there anything not on here that you would want? And we got all this feedback and we closed the loop on the survey and emailed them back saying, we heard, from you, and these are the things we're adding to what our original plan was, right? So we just had this dialogue going back with email, and it was good.
I'll tell you, I helped a friend of mine here locally that has a gym, and I was helping him with some of his marketing and stuff like that. And one of the things we did that was really simple and really powerful is like he just made a bunch of assumptions about what people wanted, what they needed, what they were looking for, what they were hoping for. And I was like, why don't you ask them? Like, it's like he'd never really thought. And obviously the gym's a much less personal experience unless you happen to be training or something. It's a much less personal experience than a chiropractor. Like you're talking to people all the time. Whereas a gym, someone could be a member for years and you don't ever really talk to them.
Yep.
But what I told him is I was like, let's just get, and it was like 3 questions. It was really basic. It was basically like, what's your favorite thing about the gym? What's your least favorite thing about the gym? And what would you like to see us do in the future? And it was 3 simple questions. They put together this like protein stretch pack thing that they were going to give away in a raffle. It was just it was just like gym stuff that like one for the women, one for the men. And they were going to give 2 of them away. And he got so much really great information. But what's interesting about it though, is that when it was all said and done, people were talking and bringing up things that he was just really blind to. Like he was thinking like, oh, I really wish I could get that other piece of equipment. And they were thinking like, I really wish you would like change out the towels more often and like, or whatever. Like it was just simple stuff. And it's, I don't know what the aversion is to asking or whether they just don't think about it, but chiropractors should never be afraid to like ask your patients what they want, what they think. They're not in charge, but they should at least have some input.
Yeah, and exactly. Like we had one person wanted our whole staff to get antibody tests every week. It's like, I'm not going to do that. So, but
thanks for the suggestion, Karen.
Yeah, exactly. Wear a hazmat suit, please. But yeah, at least they felt heard, and I thought it went really well. So that was a big thing for us with the email. And it kind of asked your question. Our weekly email is not automated. And that's actually the one thing that I still do in my clinic's marketing, other than I do some networking out, but I've got a marketing team around me that does a lot of our stuff. I still like to create, but my associates create a lot of the educational stuff as well. But I like to do the email. I still do whatever it is, I just do that. But we do have a email sequence automated for new patients. So like when a new patient gets entered in, they get a sequence of 4 emails that welcomes them, gives them some information. It's like educating them along that little. Right. So
dude, that's just smart. It's smart. It's like there is no perfect number of like autoresponders and things of that nature. And, but it's so smart it's smart to get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
Like that's the smart thing that you're doing, because the idea of, and this kind of goes back to like practice management ruining something, the
Mhm.
idea of like an orientation class, whether that's online or offline, something along those lines, patient education. A lot of times those things are taught to us from an indoctrination standpoint. And
Yep.
but if you kind of take that out and you say, listen, we're not trying to indoctrinate people,
Mhm.
but there are things that your patients don't understand about how your office works and how their body works that really would help them if we could get them up to speed.
Mhm.
And you're laying a foundation to build a great experience on. And automating that makes a ton of sense, or trying to automate it as much as possible, because pretty much everybody that comes in your door needs to know there's certain things. There's these 4 things, 3 things, 5 things they need to know. And leaving it up to chance is just silly. It's foolish.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a big part of our strategy. I think ultimately one of the things we did that was good as well. This was one of those situations where we had a little time to prepare for closing. So we made sure we jotted down, and we do a new patient log where it's the patient name, the referral source, which doctor, what their condition is. If they fall off care, we monitor that. If they've got a primary care, so we really track our patients well. And so we were able to write down a list of all the patients that were in the middle of their treatment plan when we were going to
Yeah.
close, all the ones that were regular patients that come in like once a week or once a month, all the patients that said to call them when they're open again. We had new patients on the schedule that we had to cancel, and like so we had this really well developed list. So like 3 days before we opened, my team started calling them, getting them on schedule, and it was pretty impressive what our first week back looked like by making sure we had that system in place to track the patients. So.
Yeah. Hey, you're running your business like a business. Imagine that.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you have to be like some kind of business shark or don't care about patient care, right? Because that's, I think, a misconception.
Yeah, gosh, it's just there's so many things that are good and right about
Mhm.
those practice management things, and the things that we go, ooh, that's ugly. And it's like, and we kind of had talked about this before, and maybe that's kind of a transition into that idea. And I don't know the answer. We probably will never come to the answer, but it's like you have things that are good and smart and they make sense from a business standpoint. You have things that are true about how the body heals and what chiropractic does and everything else. And all of those things can be extrapolated out too far.
Mhm.
And I don't ever know where that line is. I can always kind of smell a rat when it kind of gets out
Yeah.
past the where it should be and kind of go, oh, that's not right.
Mhm.
But I never know at what point to tell someone like, hey, you're kind of going off track. I mean, do you have any like red flags in your head as far as like marketing things you'll hear or things that people will do and you that immediately kind of goes, hmm, I don't know.
Well, definitely the Facebook ad that's like a heavily discounted thing to try to get people in the door, right? The thing that I want marketing to be is almost invisible marketing, right? To where people don't know they're being marketed to. And that's what I try to do in my practice, to where I'm not having to sound desperate. When I see advertising from chiropractors that looks or feels desperate, uh, the patients do too, and the people in the community too as well. So that's usually a red flag. Certain things with, I mean, it gets into the whole thing with ethics of chiropractic can be a problem. I think we have an issue in our profession where a lot of people are struggling to make a go of it in our profession, so they take the lesser. The easier path, and they start doing things that are unsavory to generate a buck, and that's usually scary. I want chiropractors to be, a clinician first, if they're still treating patients, and then layer on really good business and good marketing, and that's how you have just a perfect storm of all those things, and things really make a great practice.
I think that kind of to your point, when a person is not doing a good job
Mhm.
connecting with their community, not doing a job building a community of people that know who they are, they're not doing a good job of providing value.
Mhm.
You have to counterbalance that with like sales pitches and deals, and it doesn't even mean that those things are necessarily bad, but when that becomes like the foundation of your marketing is
Yeah.
like slick texts and an offer and a whatever, what that probably means, I mean, maybe not in all cases, but what that probably means is you haven't done a very good job of connecting with community, building authority, like all the things that take time
Yeah.
that are difficult, but worthwhile, the networking and all the other stuff.
Yeah, you just, we're not in a profession where you're going to be able to hang a shingle.
Yeah.
Now there are some people that are highly charismatic, great communicators,
Yep.
very good with their hands, and they build a phenomenal practice without any marketing, and so much money's coming in, they can be bad at business and still be making money. But let's just assume, if you're listening to this, you're not them.
Yeah, dude, I'm, man, I don't know who that is, but
Mm,
you know what I think is, I don't want to name names, but I won't name names, but another thing I think is interesting is that if someone has, let's say if Michael Jordan were to become a chiropractor,
mhm.
don't take marketing advice from him.
Yeah,
The reason is because there are some things that he has going on that are not reproducible,
correct.
some influence things that are not reproducible. And I've seen certain people that have done different things. I'll tell you about the one when we get done recording. I'll tell you about the
Mhm.
one because I don't want to, if I say it, it's going to be really obvious. Like you could figure out who it is. And I don't really
Yeah,
want to.
and it's just like, Michael Jordan probably would be a terrible head coach in the NBA, right?
Yeah.
Because he'd have a hard time understanding that these players are not him and can't do what he could do, and it would be a hard, like, just because you
Yeah.
can do it at his level doesn't mean you can teach it. So
Yeah. And there's something to, you know, it's also like being a chiropractor and running a business. Like those are
mhm.
not the same thing.
Yeah.
And even what you're doing with when you have associates and you have a marketing team, like that's a different skill even than running a practice by yourself with one CA. Like there
Yeah.
are leadership skills and there are structure skills that like
Mhm.
you have to level up. And it's the idea of your practice is not going to grow if you don't grow.
Mhm.
And when chiropractors get out of school, like they're at a basic level of competence for like clinical competence,
Yeah.
and they're at like a zero on business marketing, leadership, authority, like doing the things that like you would need if you had a business, like you were just going to be a business owner.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's why I talk about like kind of the roadmap of getting there. Like if you're what you just explained, if you're that chiropractor, you can get to where, let's just say, my practice is, but you have to follow that roadmap and you have to do what it takes. And that's, kind of what I discuss a lot when I work with chiropractors, or it's my podcast, things like that. So, and it's just, you have to do it though. It's just not going to come to you naturally,
I
usually.
think that that's, in my experience,
Mhm.
um, we don't live in a world that has a lack of information. We just don't.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
the information, and on, like think about it. Like have you ever really thought about this? How like with your podcast, my podcast, other things that are out there like that, videos we're putting out, like we're both content creators.
Mhm.
It's like even just the amount of stuff that a handful of people that we know personally put out, there are 100 times more good information that's free available now than there was available paid 20
Yeah.
years ago.
Oh, like when we graduated, like you could get one of those huge binders from a practice management for
The
like five.
manual.
Yeah. And it could cost you like this is $3,000
I
for
think
this.
I got a couple of them sitting over there.
Yeah,
Like,
I know I've got some too. Yeah. That's what we had to deal with.
well, so let's talk about this because I
Mhm.
wanted to actually. You have a book coming up.
Yeah.
You got a book that's being released here soon.
Mhm.
It's called Marketing Done Right. That's correct?
Doing it right.
Doing it right. Sorry.
Modern chiropractic marketing. And it's been exciting because Parker University is actually publishing it.
That's cool.
So yeah, they provided the editor, the publishing, the book design. I mean, they're doing all that. I just had to write the thing, which was last year. And I kind of, I take I take chiropractors down that roadmap of how to get from, what you talked about, young, or even, 5 years in a practice, but not where you want to be, and then get you to where you do want to get in your career. And I think the biggest mistake from a marketing perspective that we see from chiropractors is that they think social media is marketing, right?
Yeah.
And then they try it and it doesn't work, and they blame Facebook and they blame Instagram, they blame social media, right?
Yeah.
And so what the roadmap really is four things. Okay, yeah, you do have distribution channels, right? We dive big time into the book on distribution channels like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and email and direct mail, all that. That's just the vehicle, right, to get your content out there. And so the content, which is the second one, is the fuel. Okay, so you need to have that content to fuel that vehicle and get it out there. So we talk about how to have a content marketing strategy, how to do it creatively and consistently, and really have a, a good content strategy that's reproducible, like you said, so you're not getting overwhelmed. Because I wrote this book for chiropractors, and I understand, like, for the most part, you're treating patients. It's hard to also be a marketer.
Yeah.
So we talk about that. So, and then the third thing is you need to have the clearly defined message, right? So that's a big part of the problem that people have is they don't have a message that resonates with a clearly defined audience, which we kind of talked about earlier, like having an audience. So we really lay that out for the chiropractor and the steps to do it. So we make sure that you have a plan, you have a destination, you know where you want to get to. We really dive into that planning and budgeting and doing all that. So that's your destination. The vehicle to get there, which is the distribution channels, Facebook, social media, Google, all that stuff. The GPS, okay, which is going to be that messaging. You need to know how to get there and what to put in there, and then you're going to also have that fuel, which is the content. So that's the book in a nutshell.
I don't think that, I don't know that I've ever really talked about that point all that much when you
Hmm.
said that like social media is not marketing.
Yeah.
Um, I see that all the time. The
Hmm.
misconception
Yeah.
that I'm going to be on social media
Hmm.
and therefore I am marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I've ever really talked about that, but can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think a lot of people probably don't understand what you're saying when you
Hmm.
say that, because I just from the people that I deal with,
Hmm.
um, I know that's a misunderstanding.
Yeah, because you hear things like social media marketing, right? Like, so you would think it is marketing, and really, what I'm saying is it's just a distribution channel, like radio is, right? And phone book is, and things of that nature of old school stuff. So it's just a way of getting your content and messaging out there. And a lot of chiropractors put the cart before the horse, where they only focus on the Facebook ad, but their content is not good. They never got clear on who they're trying to build. Like, I'm talking a lot now about Facebook audiences. I think the key to running effective Facebook ads and content campaigns is making sure your audiences are correct, right? Which goes back, like a little segue back to where we were. One of the strategies that I did was I took my whole email, like I do this all the time, but my email list gets funneled into Facebook,
Yeah.
and anybody that has that Facebook, that email address affiliated with that Facebook account falls into an audience of people. So if you plug in 1,000 emails, maybe 700 of them have a Facebook account. Now you can run an ad to only those people, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we did to reactivate people after we closed. I ran a whole campaign. Just, it was an ad, it wasn't content, it was an ad. It was a nice little, like, video ad of, we're open, these are the measures
Yep.
we took pictures. It was like video of someone cleaning, and that the only people that saw that were the people on my email list that already know about me and been in my office.
As a general rule, what people also don't understand is those
Mhm.
ads are usually relatively inexpensive because
Exactly.
you're not marketing to tons of people, and they're responsive because the people have
Mhm.
they already know you to some level. So it's
Yeah.
not like someone that has never seen you before. They don't know your face. They don't know who it's from.
Yeah.
And so they're fairly inexpensive to do. And I actually think that some of those secondary and tertiary things, like you're talking about, whether that's trying to market to people that have been to your website already,
Mhm.
marketing to past patients, marketing to very kind of niche little things within Facebook, although the groups are small,
Mhm.
it's really good bang for the buck
Yeah.
compared to that general everybody within 5 miles of my office. Here's the $30 coupon.
Mhm.
Those don't work very well anymore. And but Facebook has the ability to give you creative ways to do their advertising. I think a lot of people just don't understand how to do it.
Exactly. And that's what we try to outline in the book is like, yeah, we definitely dive into the distribution channels like Facebook, but I just want people to understand like that's not really good marketing if that's all you're doing, right? You can't leave out the other things,
Yeah.
right? You can't leave out the clearly defined audience that you need to target. You can't leave out creative and useful content that educates them. And you can't leave out having improper messaging. So,
And I think that that's one of the things that I try to emphasize to chiropractors all the time is that whether it's social media, whether it's videos, whether it's even networking, like
mhm,
a lot of those things are very, I always refer to them as asexual, meaning like they're
mhm,
not good or bad.
yeah,
They're not effective or ineffective. They're just a platform.
mhm,
And if you know, it's like years ago, people would show up at the mall in a kiosk. It's like, well, you know, you could pay for a mall and, you know, the spot in the kiosk. That
mhm,
doesn't mean that you're going to get patients from it.
yeah,
You know, you could spend your whole life in the mall and not get a patient from it. You could be in the yellow pages, not get a patient from it. You could have all the Facebook ads and not get a patient from it. You
mhm,
could post everything in the world, not get, you could do a million videos and not get anybody from it. It's a matter of using them correctly.
mhm.
And if you don't know your community, you don't know the purpose, you don't understand kind of the method to the madness, you're just throwing crap up on the wall and hoping it
Yeah.
sticks.
Yeah. And then it doesn't a lot of times, and then you don't do anymore. And now you're not doing anything.
And you blame the medium.
Yeah, and you blame the medium. Exactly. So that's what I try to talk a lot about, and we lay that out in the book. And it's actually a book workbook combo. And
Good.
so we've got 8 different exercises that you work through, like an audience builder to really get clear on that, a marketing planner, how to budget. I get a lot of people asking about budgeting. You know, like how much do I spend? I was like, well, that's a loaded question because I don't know how much you make. So, right.
100%.
And so like we talk about a budgeter in there, and so the goal is to read the book and then work through the workbook for your practice and be able to apply it. So we're excited about it.
So, one last question here,
Hmm.
kind of because we kind of covered a lot of stuff, but in terms of deciding on you know, writing versus doing audio, like
Hmm.
podcasting versus video, like there's so many opportunities. And I think that's
Hmm.
like, you know, like I said, like we're not in an information deficit and we're not in an opportunity deficit either. The problem I think a lot of chiropractors have is that they try to do everything, or they
Yeah.
think they have to do everything, or they think they have to be great at everything,
Yeah.
instead of saying like, well, what am I going to do well, or what am I interested in? What's going to have the biggest impact? Like, is there any advice that you have for chiropractors that are trying to sort that out? They're just kind of looking at a world of marketing channel opportunity and they're just overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, yeah, because that's a big one, right? Like, and so depending on where you're at, I would recommend finding the thing that resonates with you most, like the medium. So I actually in the book we break down the different ones: is video, written, audio, and then in person, right? So
Yep.
I've got chiropractors that have built huge practices just on in-person networking, which is great.
Yeah.
I've got some people that are just amazing writers, and so they love email. They do great posts on social media. They do writing, but they don't want to get on video, which is fine. Like video is really good though if you can get on video. There's people we know that have just do video marketing. That's it. But what my recommendation would be is if you don't have a lot of time, I would focus on one of them. Really do well with that. Like go deep on that, and then from there you can repurpose. And when you start having more profits, you can hire people. And so maybe you get down to the point where you're like, say my practice where there's 3 of us doctors, and so I can we can kind of divvy up the content, right, and do that. And so you can start to delegate at that point. And we actually talk about in the book how to optimize, outsource, and delegate this type of stuff as well, because as you get busier you're going to have to do that, because I don't want you doing everything. Like I don't do everything, even when it's pertaining to the modern chiropractic marketing business. I don't do a lot of
Yeah.
that stuff. I create a lot of content. I got a lot of people doing it for me, but I've been doing this for practicing for 15 years and I built up some head of steam to do that. So I would pick one and go deep. Then once you start to get a little more profits, you can delegate out and hire and outsource and things like that. You can start to redistribute or repurpose. Okay.
Trying to be great at everything's a killer.
Oh, it's
Like
hard.
it's, and I think one of the things I call it the imaginary Dr. Perfect. And the
Mhm.
imaginary Dr. Perfect is you watch like 15 different videos, or you listen to like 15 different podcasts, you listen to 15 different doctors tell you how to be successful.
Yeah.
And then in your head, you create this person who's really good at 15 different things, and that person doesn't exist because
Yeah.
each of those people had a really specific excellence in a particular area, and they suck at a bunch of other stuff that they get help with, or they delegate, or
Yep.
they just deal with the consequences of sucking at it, or
Mhm.
whatever. There's all kinds of ways of handling it. But I think with information consumption, like massive information consumption, and without a realistic viewpoint on it, you look at it and go, oh, well, I have to be great at everything. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, you're going to suck at some things, and that's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And so you just got to, be honest with yourself and go from there. And then again, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you've got a team around you that's where your practice is generating all this. It's not you generating all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a website people need to go to
Yeah.
get the book, buy the book? Tell us about that.
Yeah, definitely. I like to do the bit.ly links, which is a good marketing strategy. If you got some crazy long URL, you can go to bit.ly.com and they actually get you a nice little clean, pretty link. And so this one is bit.ly. So that's bit.ly/doing it right MCM. And you can find the book there.
.mcn. All right, I'll make sure I put that link in the
Yeah.
show notes as well.
MCM, like Modern Chiropractic Marketing.
MCM. I said
There
N.
you go. I caught you.
See, keeping me honest. I like it.
I got used to listening, right? As being a podcast host myself, you get better at listening.
Dude, I got to get better at listening.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you go because I know you're busy too. But one of the things that I found was I dove deep into podcasting, right, like you did. And that's gotten me better at my patient communication.
Yeah.
It's got me better at listening to people. I've gotten better on video because now I know how to talk, and I've rehearsed a lot of stuff just by talking all the time. And so sometimes when you go deep on something, it has carryover effect to the other aspects.
Yep.
So,
And I also, it's really, 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 really important to understand it's not fair to compare yourself to somebody who's done 100 episodes, or
no.
someone who's done 1,000 videos, or someone who's written 1,500 blogs, or what. Like, that's not fair.
Mhm.
And if, even before I started doing the podcast, like this podcast, I had like 4 other podcasts that I've done
Mhm.
that sucked and were terrible. And even my early episodes of this one, like, you can't even get them anymore, because like I just kind of only cycle through like the last 50 or something like
Yeah.
that, or whatever, just because I just went past 300. And it's like, that's not fair. So I think you have to just be okay with not being good at something when you
Yep.
start, and just be committed to the process. Otherwise you're never going to get there. Like, you're never going to get to where you ultimately could be if you just quit on it.
I agree 100%.
All right, man. I'm going to let you go. Anything else you want to say before we finish up?
No, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your audience's time. I hope everybody's staying healthy, and I just wish everybody the best in growing their practices back up to where they were. I know it's been a challenge, but learn from this that if you have a really good audience around you, you can sustain these types of things. Maybe it's a hurricane or an earthquake or it's a pandemic. You can sustain them easier. So get at it now, build an audience, create content, and you'll do good.